you're finishing up at Sonic Mobility. I know you're mentoring a bunch of companies at the Calgary Incubator, but you decide to come up with Tint. Tell me about why you looked your wife in the eyes and said, Sonic Mobility was so much fun, let's do it again.
In fact, one of the days I remember at Sonic Mobility was as you go, as everybody, every one of your students there ventures out into the world and decides they want to take on something entrepreneurial. It is a roller coaster ride, and you've heard that from everybody, and you'll experience it yourself firsthand. And you'll have your up days and your down days. And I remember on one of the down days, and I'd always tried very hard to insulate my family from the ups and the downs of the roller coaster. But I remember one time my wife saying to me, "So if this one doesn't work, would you please just get a job?" and that was when I knew I had to make it work, because I knew I couldn't survive in a job.
You'd finished up at Sonic Mobility. You're working as a mentor at the Calgary Technologies Incubator Park, and you go to your wife and said, "Let's do it again. I got this great idea for a Tint," and she says.
So the good news is, she says you're crazy, but she knows I'm crazy. She married crazy, and that's what she's stuck with it. But the good thing is that because Sonic Mobility was a successful exit, I now had a little bit of cushion to go out and continue to play. So I launched the mentoring at which is now Innovate Calgary, used to be called Calgary Technologies, was wonderful. I got to meet a lot of great entrepreneurs, but I looked at them and in my strange, twisted way, I said, why are they getting to have all the fun? So I decided it was time to get back in the game. Besides, I prefer being a player to being a coach anyways. So we jumped in and we created Tint. And Tint was trying to change the world. I wanted to build something which was less of a niche product. That I wanted something that was going to touch everybody on the planet.
So when I remember hearing that phone call, and I said, "Yes, Derek, you're crazy. You're going to start again." If I remember the original pitch, it had something to do with meta tagging websites. It had something to do with annotating. So when I visited a site, I could not only see what the site's owners put out, but I could see what people in my network had commented and left notes. But I wasn't there as often as you were. Why don't you tell me, what was the problem originally you were trying to address with Tint?
So the original problem was I felt that people would like to have conversations about content they find on the web, particularly around social networks. And I thought, my use case was essentially teenage girl sees cute boy's profile on social network. She wants to have a conversation with a couple of her other teenage girls about this boy. And so right on top of his profile page, we allowed them to annotate, mark it up. They could even dress him in clothing, put hats on his head, speech bubbles. And it was meant to be a fun, interactive, dynamic platform targeting teenage users.
How did that turn out for you?
A huge failure.
But hold on, let's not just laugh that off. What do you mean by a huge failure? You burned millions of dollars, you offended people, you were banned from certain countries. What do you mean failure?
So at this point, we'd only raised angel capital. We hadn't gone into our first VC round yet. So we had burned through capital to build this, because even then it wasn't as easy to build these things as it is today. We tested it out. As part of trying to validate this, we went and asked teenage girls, "Would you use this? Would this be fun?" They all said yes. We did focus groups and they loved it. And then we put the product out there and it just didn't really go. And so we took a step back and said, well, what's wrong with this? Well, maybe it's because it requires you to install a plugin in your browser, and nobody installs plugins in browsers. So maybe we need to have a way to integrate it to the website. So we went to what at the time was Canada's largest teen social network, bigger than Facebook. It was a company in Edmonton called Nexopia. And we made a partnership with Nexopia, and they embedded our platform into their platform. So it became something you didn't even have to install. You showed up on somebody's social profile and you could begin to create this layer like Photoshop on top of the page. And we thought, now that there's no installs, this is going to be great. People are going to love it. And Nexopia promoted it. The initial users said, hey, this is really cool. And then the usage went up and then it went down. And what we learned was the product wasn't inherently sticky. Although, all the kids told us they loved it and gave us all the right answers, they didn't keep using it. So for us, the realization that this was just simply not working. And one of the things that if you read Seth Godin and others, it's when do you decide to pivot? When is it that because
You're talking about Seth Godin, the dip, right? How do you know when you're at the bottom of the life cycle and you're on your way back up, or how do you know when you're at the bottom of the life cycle and about to die?
Exactly. And the bottom line is you don't know, but you have to trust your instincts and make some decisions. And in that particular decision, I wasn't seeing anything that was going to give me any confidence that we were going to get this one to click, and that maybe we just fundamentally misunderstood the teenage user we were targeting. But in a very fortunate parallel, I'd been approached by some magazine publishers who had published content for teenage users, and they saw our platform in Nexopia and said, you know what, we'd like to try to use your platform to encourage teens to engage in conversations on the content we're publishing. And it was through those discussions we started to have with these publishers, we realized that the teens were already engaging in discussions around the content. But what they were doing was copying and pasting the content into their social networks and having the conversation there. And they really had no idea how to measure that or engage with it, or even they had no context for it all. And so we said, well, maybe we can help with that. Maybe we can use some of the technology we developed to track and measure what's being copied, where is it being pasted, and what level of conversation is going on around the content, and to make sure that those people that are having conversations off your site can find their way back. And so that gave birth to the new Tint product, which became a tool for publishers on the web to measure what people were copying and distributing through social networks and email. And that one was a big success.